Welcome everyone to this explainer. My people, today we're looking at a topic that touches literally every single one of us. Whether you're sitting in an air-conditioned boardroom in Victoria Island or hustling in the bustling markets of Kano, we are talking about Nigeria's economy. But we're not just going to sit here and read out high-level economic theories, right? No. We're going to contrast those big, sweeping government numbers with daily survival, the real hustle on the streets. Let's dive right in and uncover the true story of what's happening on paper versus what's actually happening on the pavement.
So, this is the burning question on everyone's lips right now. If you look at the latest World Bank reports, you'll see them celebrating. They're talking about a 4% growth rate, macroeconomic stabilization, unified exchange rates, you name it. But walk outside your door. The street is not smiling, is it? There's this massive frustration because the paper says we are growing, but our pockets? Well, our pockets say we are shrinking. Why is there such a huge disconnect between these top-level economic wins and our everyday reality?
Well, this number right here brilliantly illustrates that disconnect. 139 million. That's the staggering number of Nigerians the World Bank projects will be living in poverty by 2025. Just let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a slight dip in living standards, we are talking about severe, micro-level pain hitting more than half the country. When the cost of living skyrockets because of structural shocks, this is the real human cost. Millions are slipping below the poverty line, completely left out of those big macroeconomic victories.
Now, to really understand this pain, we have to look inside the home. The average poor household in Nigeria is spending up to 70% of their income on just one thing: food. When you're spending 70 kobo out of every single naira just to eat, high-level fiscal wins feel like they belong on another planet. A jump in the price of rice, bread, or transport, it doesn't just mean tightening your belt. It means making literally impossible choices between putting food on the table, paying for healthcare, or keeping your kids in school.
And this brings us to what we call the paper versus pavement reality. On the paper side, the government has successfully bumped up our foreign reserves to a very healthy $45.5 billion, and fiscal revenues have gone up for the 5th year in a row. Great, right? But down on the pavement, the average citizen is getting crushed by an average inflation rate of 31.4% for 2024. That's the highest we've seen since 1995. The macro space is recovering, sure, but the micro space, it's burning. And honestly, nowhere has this fire felt more than with our young people.
Section 1. The Youth Unemployment Time Bomb.
Nigeria is a young nation, but look at this number, 53%. That is the stark reality of our youth unemployment and underemployment rate. Now, I know the official stats recently claimed the rate dropped to 6.5% because of some, let's say, controversial calculation changes. But experts and anyone actually looking at the reality on the ground strongly agree that 53% is the true reflection of the daily struggle our youth are facing.
The math here is just incredibly sobering. Every single year, 4 to 5 million young Nigerians graduate, finish their training, and step out into the labor market. But the economy simply isn't creating enough jobs to catch them. Imagine a massive pipeline of incredible talent pouring into a bucket that's already full to the brim. It leads to a profound lack of economic opportunity and, naturally, deep, deep frustration all across the country. Which brings us to this chilling warning from Dr. Yemi Kale, the former Director General of the National Bureau of Statistics. He hit the nail on the head, saying this isn't just an economic issue, it's a national security threat. Think about it. When you have tens of millions of young, capable, energetic people with no clear path to earn a dignified living, our demographic dividend, which should absolutely be our greatest superpower, risks turning into a demographic crisis. It's straight up a matter of national stability.
So, what's actually keeping our youth out of the workforce? Beyond just the general lack of jobs, Afrobarometer data breaks down the specific barriers. Employers are demanding years of experience that young people simply haven't had the chance to get. Plus, there's a serious mismatch when it comes to adequate training and the digital skills required for today's economy. It's this crazy vicious cycle, right? You can't get a job without experience, but you can't get experience without a job.
Section 2. The hustle is hard. SME struggles.
Now, what's really interesting here is that young Nigerians aren't just sitting back waiting for handouts. If the formal sector won't hire them, they're going to try to build it themselves. A massive 60% of Nigerian youth say they would prefer to start their own business. They want to be creators, founders, employers. The hustle is literally in our DNA. But the environment they're trying to build in, wow, it is incredibly hostile.
And here is one of the biggest hurdles, 26.5%.
That is the central bank's monetary policy rate as of early 2024. Because this baseline rate is so incredibly high, the actual lending rates that commercial banks slap onto small businesses are pushed way past 30%, sometimes even hitting 60 or 80% annually.
I mean, with rates this high, how can any business survive, let alone actually grow? Small and medium enterprises are staring down a staggering 13 trillion naira funding gap. They're being choked. They face interest rates over 30%. Strict collateral requirements that young founders obviously don't have, and commercial banks that are super risk-averse. The banks would much rather lend to giant corporations or the government than take a chance on a street-level entrepreneur.
So, because the formal banking doors are basically slammed in their faces, look at where SMEs actually get their funding. 38% are relying on family and friends. Only 26% ever manage to actually get a formal bank loan. In fact, the data shows that 51% of informal businesses now just flat out refuse to even try taking a formal loan because the conditions are just too tight. They're forced to rely on informal, often way more expensive networks just to keep the lights on.
Section 3. The urge to emigrate.
You know, when the jobs aren't there and the environment is choking your business, human nature just takes over. Faith in the system starts to break down. Survey data shows that youth give overwhelmingly negative reviews of government performance, especially when it comes to inflation and creating jobs. When 86% of young people view the economy as fairly bad or very bad, it shows a profound structural loss of confidence. They just don't believe the environment will nurture their dreams anymore.
And listen, this isn't just complaining about the price of goods in the market today. 91% of young Nigerians see the country as moving in the wrong direction. That is a structural reality. Experts actually estimate that the true middle class in Nigeria has shrunk to just about 1.5% of the entire population. The ladder of upward mobility feels completely broken, and it leaves so many feeling trapped right at the bottom.
Which leads us directly to the Japa syndrome. And this sobering statistic right here, 60%. 6 in 10 young Nigerians are actively considering emigrating. The number of youth giving a lot of thought to leaving the country has literally tripled since 2017. And it's not because they don't love Nigeria. They are looking beyond our borders in a desperate search for work, for dignity, and for just a little relief from this crushing economic hardship.
Section 4. Moving from ideas to execution.
But hey, this explainer is absolutely not about despair. It's about finding the pathway forward. So the crucial point is captured beautifully once again by Dr. Kale. The challenge is not the absence of ideas, it is the absence of execution. Nigeria doesn't need more theories, we don't need more shiny white papers, we know exactly what needs to be done. What we need right now is sustained political will, real institutional discipline, and leaders who will actually see these plans through all the way down to the street level.
Because the experts have actually laid out a very clear, actionable pathway to recovery. First, they tell us we need to aggressively invest in vocational and digital skills training that actually links directly to high-growth sectors. Step 2, build job-linked infrastructure. Think renewable energy and agribusiness, sectors that can absorb massive amounts of labor. And Step 3, expand the tax base using digital tools. Lower the crushing burden on the few and create exemptions that finally let small businesses breathe.
And for our hustlers, our small businesses, we need highly specific interventions. We have to create concessionary finance windows with single-digit interest rates. We also need to seriously look at non-interest banking models like asset-based financing. That way, you're sharing the risk and the profit, instead of just dumping massive interest rates on a young founder. Finally, we got to lower the barriers so small businesses can actually raise capital on the formal exchange. The money needs to flow to the grassroots.
So what does this all mean? The solutions are clear. The roadmap is drawn. Our macroeconomy is finally showing those signs of stabilizing on paper. But the ultimate question we have to ask our leaders, our institutions, and ourselves is this: how do we execute these solutions decisively and with integrity so the millions of Nigerians hustling on the pavement can finally reap the rewards? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, guys, and let's keep pushing for a system that actually works for us all. Catch you next time.